Welcome to Trauma and Transcendence, where healing meets awakening. I'm Amanda M. Dodd, your guide on this transformative journey. Thank you for joining me on this episode. Let's transcend together. Hello, welcome to Trauma and Transcendence, and I've got a very special guest for you today. I'm so excited to introduce Dan Goyette. And I met Dan, as one does nowadays, randomly on Facebook with a request of, oh, we've got friends in common, but who's this guy? And it was one of the best meetings that I've had because Dan is a very passionate hypnotist who has the Michigan Hypnotherapy Guild, but also the Michigan Hypnosis Conference, where I was then invited. And I've very much enjoyed exploring and getting to know Dan since. But today, we're really going to get to know Dan because we're going to find out about what Dan's life has been like, if there was trauma, and did it lead to transcendence. Without much more ado, thank you, Dan Goyette, for joining us here today.
Hey, glad to be here, Amanda. Thanks for having me, and just a wonderful day here in the office and in the studio. Just getting ready to head off to the Performing Hypnosis Summit. As you can probably see, the clutter behind me as I'm getting everything all packed up. But yeah, happy to be here.
That's right. That is one of your biggest features, is that you are a traveling hypnotist.
Exactly. And as a matter of fact, shameless plug, I'm actually going to be working on a gosh darn it project. That was rutabaga moment there. We'll talk about that in a little while. Called The Traveling Hypnotist. It is going to be a documentary 1 year long, and hopefully it goes well. So, but yeah.
I saw a little bit about that, and I really did start to get excited because that was a whole new component for me when I started doing this work, realizing, oh, this is something that can have quite a bit of travel entailed. And then there are hypnotists who just stay in their bubble, and that blows my mind too. Like, wow, that's so isolating and alienating, but if that works for you, enjoy.
Yes.
So what inspired that documentary for you?
Actually, it came about from the Hypno Cafe podcast and magazine. The magazine, we do articles on traveling because I travel so much, and I know other hypnotists who travel, and often we'll do an article on winning the we did one in the winter edition. I don't know if you read it, which was winning the hotel game, because I get a lot of questions like, hey, how do I get to this hotel, or what do I do when I get there? So we did that article, and I began to think of need to explain this in a better detail, but in a more honest, open, and authentic detail, as I always am. People always ask me, like, well, you lead such a glamorous life traveling all over the place, Dan. I'm like, oh, buddy, if you only knew how unglamorous it was. So they're about to, but they're also going to realize, as you just talked about staying in the bubble, why it's so important to get out of your bubble, what the benefits are, and how great it is. Because I had a individual that I know, I'm not going to say their name right now, a couple people actually asked me the questions, how do you make money going to a conference? You don't. Was my answer. You don't make money. What you do is you make connections, you make friends, you increase your visibility throughout the field of hypnosis, and you start to generate more of a brand. And I hate to say that because you're probably, I can see you wincing, like, Dan just said brand. He said, oh, I'm going to get him on that because I'm the most unbranded guy out there. But so that's what put it together, was just, here it is, guys. Here it is. This, you see what I see, but here's the reason why it's so important.
Yeah, that's been really fun watching that evolve for you. And I've only really known you since you began the conference. So that's been relatively short. I don't know what your life was like before that, or what even got you into hypnosis. I don't know all of those stories quite yet. So I'm excited to go there and to learn that about you. But it's been fun watching you evolve in the little bit of time that I've gotten to enjoy you, and that's going on 2 or 3 years now. I want to say coming up to 3. Is that?
I know,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it's just like you know, it's like, did she lose a bet? Seriously? What is? I mean, come on. No, it's like she lost a bet and got stuck with this guy. So we don't understand.
No.
So,
No, you have been awesome. I've enjoyed you so much. It's terrible. You know that I feel guilty so easily. That's not right.
no, I'm just teasing. But what got me going in the conference, we'll start there, was Heather, my business partner, who was my executive manager prior to us incorporating into the guild, was the fact that she was watching me go to all these events and conferences from Las Vegas to St. Louis to England. And she asked the questions like, you seem to be going to all these and everybody wants you to come out and present, and you're making money for them. Why don't we have a conference here in Michigan?
How long had you been traveling by that point, going to other conferences and presenting and speaking and attending?
Oh, boy. I started going places in 2015.
Okay.
Started traveling back in 2015. So
you were seasoned by then. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I knew that it was a big job. And it is a big job. Because, and that's what I told her. So, well, I don't know if we want to do that, or at least I don't. Because it's like, it's the old saying, it's like, we should get a dog. Oh, yeah, you say that now, but I'm the one to feed it and walk it. And
who's getting up at 3 a.m.? That's what I want to know, because let me tell you, we have 4 dogs. I got the bad end of that deal.
Wait a minute. Weren't you supposed to? You said you were going to. Where are you going? But anyways, all joking aside, I told her I wasn't sure if I wanted to do that, just because there's such an event with that, and there's so much to work with it, and so many moving parts, and
especially post-COVID. Oh my goodness! Because now people cancel at the drop of a dime, and they're used to things being virtual.
Yes, and that's switching around. So I didn't want to do it, but she goes, "No, you're not listening to me." Why don't we have a conference? Which meant we're starting a conference. Now, I can't put it all on her because I don't do anything I don't want to do. But yeah, she did have to talk me into it a little bit. So we started that first one, as you know, in Gaylord. And then the second one was in the UP. The third one this year is going to be much better because it will not be the pilgrimage that it has been in the past, which you mentioned canceling. The people that came to those first 2 Michigan conferences really wanted to come because it was a pilgrimage to get there. So let's be honest about that. So now there's still a million moving parts. There's still so much to do, but we started it also on the confines of bringing Michigan together. Michigan used to be a mecca of hypnosis and hypnotherapy, and then it really fell off. If you looked at a map on Bing or Google, you would find a lot of practicing hypnotherapists. And just a few years back, I just discovered, man, it's like there isn't any. When I got done with my training, there was a bunch, and now there isn't. And, we decided perhaps we should do something that brings these people together. As Jim Kellner says, collaboration beats competition every time. Yeah. So that was another reason.
When I train new mediums, that's the first thing I have them do is look around and are there things for you to join in and go and be part of? And if not, you're meant to be the placeholder. You're meant to create that. And you have immensely. Let's go further back. What got you into hypnosis overall?
I want to say, I was in my 40s. I remember that. And I was approaching fastly what I thought was fastly the end of my fire medic career, at least in the area that I was working 24/7. And I thought to myself,
is a lot of trauma, just continual spiking of the cortisol at all hours.
But I thought to myself, well, what do I want to do? What do I want to do after this? What do I want to do? And I had an epiphany one day in the back of the ambulance, as we do. We pick people up, and they're overdosing, their alcohol, their drugs, they're telling me why they do what they do, and da-da-da-da-da. And just in the back of my mind, I thought to myself, man, I could have been overcharging these people all these years. Little joke. But
Yeah.
I didn't want to go into nursing
Mhm.
because I had seen so many paramedics and firemedics and go to school, get their nursing degree, go to a hospital, they wind up in the ER, then all of a sudden there's a budget crunch in the hospital, and they're the brand new guy. They're low total, so they get laid off and let go, and then they've spent all
Yeah.
this money and time, and now they're back out on the road.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do that.
Literally also backbreaking work. I've known many nurses in my time, and oftentimes they're in low budget situations where then they have to lift a patient on their own, and they've got all kinds of hacks for how they're going to move this body around on the bed. And literally they break their backs because they just can't sustain it.
Yeah, it's hard. So I thought to myself, well, what do I want to do? Well, at that time, Kirkland Community College, which is here in Michigan, had was going to have a course called Limited Licensed Counselor, which is something we have in Michigan and other areas in the United States have it. Basically, you're counseling people, but on a limited way, and you can bill and make a little money doing that, and you can work in the hospitals, and you get to sit down. That was the important thing. I get to sit down. So I went over and signed up for that course. And at the time I was talking to the advisor, said, hey, it's not ready yet. We've got, at least 10, 12 months before we're going to be ready to do this. And I said, okay. They said, but yeah, in the meantime, go over and take this course for, credits. We'll give you credits for it. It was the Michigan Hypnosis Institute here in Michigan. And I think at the time they were affiliated with, I want to say, Kentwood College. That might not be right, but I in my head it's right. They were also licensed by the state as an educational facility. So I thought, all right, went over there, and it was about 10 months or so, or a little bit longer. It was an extensive course. And I got done with that, got back to the college, and they said, well, we didn't have enough people sign up for it, so we're not going to do it. As is often happens in a small community college, they do their courses on the amount of people signed up, because that's where they're going to make their money. And then they didn't have that.
So it sounds like purely accidental. I mean, you could have been playing like the world's largest game of Plinko with your education and training, and it landed.
Yeah, it was. So yeah, it's like ding, 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 ding. Okay.
But you were already in a caregiving space. So let's go back even further. What led you to even want to do that, to be in that caregiving field?
I didn't.
Was that another game of Plinko? You can be honest.
No.
Okay.
I am third generation fire, fourth generation Navy. At some point, I was going to wind up in a uniform.
Yeah.
And so I had gotten out of the service, was hired on at the fire department because I didn't want to teach. We won't, get into that, but there was a reason I left the Navy, but I had a great time in the Navy, so I didn't have any bad feelings towards it.
Yeah. Still service based.
I got hired by the fire department, and that's what I was doing. I was on a rescue truck. That's what I did. And then the chief came over to the house. Now, when the fire chief comes to the house, that's you have done something either incredibly stellar or incredibly not great. And since I had just been hired on, I'm thinking, well, this can't be good. Yeah. And he walked up and he's like, hey, we got this program going on. I just wanted to know if you wanted to be a medical first responder. You could take the class and be this MFR. And I said, well, what's that? And he said, well, you work on the ambulance. And I said, oh, yeah, no. No. I don't want anyone there. And he looked at me and said, do you not understand that I drove to your house? Okay, I'm already signed up, aren't I, Chief? Yes, you are. So be here at this day. So that was the start of that. Yeah.
Do you think that was made easier because you were already a serviceman, and so
No.
I'm married to a serviceman, and I find there is that tendency to follow orders to an extent.
Yeah, there is a tendency to follow orders. But when you're already signed up and you know that the department has paid money for you to be there, and they're paying you, as we say in the service industry, when you're wearing the blue tuxedo, you dance on the floor they tell you to. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's how that got started, and it
So
just obviously it rolled from there.
when did you enter into the service? How old were you then?
18.
Oh, you didn't even have a chance.
Yeah. I still remember the last thing I ever ate as a civilian was a Wendy's chili and cheese dog with a small order of fries and a small Coke. And I don't know why I remember that, but I do. Then, of
Because
course,
I'm guessing it didn't sit right and there was regret.
No, that was a good chili dog. I like a good chili dog. So, of course, then that next moment I was in boot camp. So, but yeah.
Oh, well, that's why you remember, because then it's, your needs being deprived and MREs, which
Yes.
you may as well be eating dog food.
I don't know. I set a land speed record. I was actually accidentally entered into the delayed entry program. And from the time I took the ASVAB to the time that I signed the recruitment papers, to the time I was at the MET station, the military entrance, I was like 96 hours. So, yeah, it was a clerical error, but it's to this day that I'm just like, well, that was funny. However, I did leave 3 days early from the Navy. So I got that time back.
I guess it balances it out. Yeah, in the end, it's a balance.
It does. But so anyways, yeah, that's how I got into hypnosis and hypnotherapy, was that, just because of that. And I sat there with $1,600 worth of certificates in hypnosis. And of course, at the time, I was a little upset because I'm thinking, well, what do I do with this? For the love of God. So I kind of put it aside for a little bit and decided to open an office in my house. I opened a small office in my house. And for the first 2 years, from 2012 to 14, I want to say I saw a total of maybe 60 people in my house, because I really wasn't getting into it. As a matter of fact, the first client I ever had was a firefighter who wanted to quit smoking. And he'd asked me about it. So, well, I got this program that they gave me, and it's supposed to help you quit smoking. So, yeah, we can try it. Come on over. We'll go through it. He goes, well, I can't pay you because I don't have any money. So, well, I know you don't have any money because I don't have any money. But he said to me, my wife will make you 12 large chocolate chunk cookies. And if you knew this woman's chocolate chunk cookies, I was like, sold. So for the price of the cookies, this guy quit smoking. So that was my very, very first client.
It's better than the Ron White story. Have you heard that one? Ron White, one of the comedians from like the Comedy Central Redneck tour.
Oh, yeah. I know Ron White, yeah.
He's one of my favorite. And he talked about, I think he needed to give up alcohol and or smoking. And he needed to do it for surgery, and he was directed towards hypnosis. And he ended up going to this guy's garage, and the guy had like a crazy looking headpiece. And so immediately when I'm hearing your story of working out of your home in exchange for cookies, my mind goes, well, at least he didn't have the crazy hairpiece and it wasn't in the garage, so that's all right.
Yeah. I mean, I had the room fixed up really nice. I had all the little certificates on the wall and everything. So yeah, but
he didn't have the brown lazy boy recliner inhabited by who knows what else. It was a good start.
Yeah, what did I have? I think I had a recliner that I bought from I want to say like the Salvation Army or St. Vincent's de Paul. It was St. Vincent's de Paul here in Michigan, which is, I guess, like Salvation Army, but we have it here in Michigan. I think it was like $65. It was this big green recliner. It was in fairly good shape. And that was it. That was the start of my storied hypnosis career. All right, hold on. I'm going to turn something down. We're getting a little feedback. There we go. So sorry about that.
Mm-hmm. So you've told me you've been blown up multiple times.
Oh, yes. Yes.
At what point was that for you?
Oh, God, let's go back to 1992.
Okay.
Steam explosion on the
Ooh.
USS Yellowstone. Something had happened in one of the large fan rooms. One of those steam lines that ran through there, or the pressure lines as we called them, exploded. And it put all this, it obviously would put pressure in the room. It's a metal room. The metal doors would seal. And they had huge gaskets on it. I mean, you could really seal the door up tight. And the thing is that you would have to do is net the door and drill a hole and open the petcock to release the pressure. And the guys told me they did that. And I'm like, okay, so I've got my helmet on. I'm going to go in and check this out. And I cracked it's a big lever. So you pretty much just pull this lever and the door opens up. I pulled the lever and then the door flew off the hinges, striking me. It was like a Bugs Bunny cartoon, really. If you think about it, it's like Wile E. Coyote slapped against the wall. That was the first one. Broke my helmet too. It was really,
Oh, wow.
which I liked that helmet. It was brand new.
Oh.
So yeah.
Well, it was better the helmet than your head. So thankfully, you stayed intact at that moment. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I have always had a hard head. But over the years, the cumulative blows have left me with the rutabaga moment every once in a while. So, which is kind of funny. So that was the first one. And then we go back.
So what was that like? Did your life flash before your eyes? Did you have all of that occur, or no?
No. I mean, you're there, then you're not, and then you are. So, I mean, because, well, my heart didn't stop, but, you're awake and then you're not awake and then you're awake and then, you're upset. So, but it was one of those interesting things. So, yeah.
Did you notice it change you at all?
No, it did not.
That's the thing I find fascinating.
As a matter of fact, the guys always tell the story that I got up, I'm bleeding, and I got up and I turned around and I said, "Why, Almighty, that steam leak?" I was so mad. Just like, dude, you're so mad.
Yeah, because that sounded so avoidable.
Could have been, but it didn't. And then there was the electric one. So, and that did stop my heart for a bit. So we were working on
going for all of the elements here. One of each kind. Is that what we're doing?
I was collecting. There's people like you could have collected Beanie Bears. Just really. So hold on.
Oh man.
But I can't remember what we were doing, but we were working down in the engine room, which is where I worked most of the time as a damage controlman. I was always in the deep spaces of the ship, much like Gollum, just cruising around down there. The crescent wrench is the precious. And they hadn't secured the power all the way, and I closed a breaker to do something, big metal breaker, and it shocked me. And it kind of knocked me across the room, and I remember waking up in medical, and they were just like, "Oh man, you're back." I'm like, "Where'd I go?" Like,
oh my goodness,
am I not in the engine room anymore?
How long were you out, roughly?
Well, let me see. It takes about 10 minutes to get me out of there. So I was unconscious for a while, but my heart only stopped for a minute or two, as I understood it. So basically,
and for you, it just faded to black. There was nothing more.
Yeah, there was nobody there. They were like, well, "It's not your time." That didn't happen, which is horrific. Just because, as the fire department priest used to tell us, like, the thing about hell is you tend to know most of the people. So, it's like, "Oh, Uncle Bob, how you doing?" So you were right. You would see me. So. But yeah, and so it was all right. So other than that, there was a couple of flashovers.
Yeah.
backdraft.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, you really were going for every single element. You've got you've got electricity, you've got fire, you had air. Did you have a water one too?
Funny you should mention that.
No, it's not.
We were getting the mail. It was myself and Cybok, and that was his name, Seaman Cybok. And we were on a whaleboat. Just the waves were huge, but we had just gotten.
Oh my
It
God.
was, I think, it was after Desert Storm, Desert Shield, so people really wanted their mail. And this was back in a time where you just couldn't get online and call. You know, I mean, there was no video conferencing. You couldn't call home to your wife. So those you got a letter in the 90s or a phone call out to sea. It was not, you couldn't communicate. You were 1,000 miles out to sea. People weren't haranguing you with email. So the whaleboat actually wound up sinking right under from beneath us. It just cracked, and that was it.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And it took them a while to realize that we weren't on the Yellowstone. I want to say it was like just before I got off, late 93. So yeah, and I'll tell you, you haven't lived until you've been bobbing around in the dark water and then something bumps you because you don't know what it is. Yeah,
no, that's a thing of nightmares right there. That's enough for most people to be like, yeah, no, I don't like this.
So, yeah, I've always joked that if I could get my hands on a time machine, I would go back and say, like, listen, it's not worth it. Just drown. But if that happens and then drown, then you're not alive to get the time machine to go back to tell yourself to give up. And then you got it. And it becomes this whole thing where you're in a loop, and that's no good. I'm kidding.
And then there are all the incredible things you've done since then. So I'm really grateful that that has worked out.
He didn't
Oh
drown.
my goodness.
So, yeah. It's just ridiculous. I've often think I really believe that the Grim Reaper assigned to me is living in his mother's basement playing video games. It's like, Dan's on fire. I'll get it later. Bring me a Yoo-hoo. So,
oh God.
You'll be all right.
Yeah, that's not ideal. Did you know you signed up to be an NPC? was there an agreement or a waiver?
He's like, he's living in the town of Honeywood. So adventurer. See, now that you do that, I'm going to go to the next conference with one of those big question mark things over my head.
I happen to play World of Warcraft.
Adventurer.
Well, World of Warcraft has been a big part of my life, so I appreciate that so much more than you know. Oh, goodness.
Oh, boy. Okay, we got to stop that. So
what would you say through those experiences, like all those experiences, because there were numerous and they were vastly different in so many ways, and then also there were a lot of similarities there too. What would you say your post-traumatic growth is?
Post-traumatic growth. That's a new one. That's a term that I've been hearing lately.
That is a Shelley Stockwellism that I stole and I'm clinging to.
Your post-traumatic growth, I had it removed. Is what happened.
You would go there.
No. The thing it left me with was not so much post-traumatic, but a lot of people will be afraid of failure, or I need confidence before I can do that, or I'm not ready to do that. I don't wait. And some people have gotten a little angry with me over the years for that. It's like, well, I had that idea and I was thinking about doing that. Well, while you're thinking, I'm doing. And I don't worry about failure. I didn't worry about failing at the conference. Like when we put that together, we didn't know if anybody was going to come that first year. We didn't know if anybody was going to buy a ticket. We didn't know what was going to happen. And, Heather was a little nervous, but I wasn't. I don't worry about failing. I don't worry about falling. I don't worry about having any problems or issues because I know they're going to arise, and you just deal with them at that point. And nothing that happens putting together a conference, even the moving parts or any of that stuff, is anywhere comparable to what just bumped me in the leg. Look for a fin, look for a fin, look for a fin. That was what I gained from that. I mean, you're here and then you're not.
Yeah.
So
that's big. I mean, so through that experience, what I'm hearing is that you actually found freedom to unapologetically and fully live without the overthinking and the stressing and the worrying.
Yes, I don't really
Yeah.
stress at all, just because of that. I mean, you'll see a lot of people that are worried, and
Mhm.
you know, I've basically just said to myself, and I often say, listen, we'll just take it one disaster at a time and come up with the big W.
That I can relate to. When I think back to my own encounters and things that I'd had, what I was primarily aware of is I had zero fear of death. Not that I had much fear of death even before that, but after, especially not. And then it's, yeah, if I want to do something, I'm just gonna do it. I'm not gonna care either way. It's a learning experience. I win either way. It doesn't matter.
Exactly. So I've always said that to myself. You go to a funeral and they're like, and you'll spend eternity with your loved ones. I'm thinking, I've been trying to avoid Christmas for the last 20 years. What is this eternity thing all of a sudden? Seriously?
Yeah. So the benefit of being a medium is that my perspective is immensely warped around all of those things. And so I know when they say eternity, that it feels very different. It's not the equivalent of the Thanksgiving from hell, thankfully. And that when we're on that higher side, we all tend to be the very best of ourselves. So there's none of the, the low key shaming, guilt tripping, and harassment that happens in most family gatherings.
Did you hear about your sister Joanne just promoted? Yeah, that's great. Fantastic. Anyway, I don't even have a sister. That's funny you should say that because I know
Yeah.
we talked about this prior to that. And I have a lot of clients that come in that are firefighters and paramedics and stuff, and they are looking
Yeah.
for that, the best
Yeah.
version of themselves. And
Mhm.
that's something I'm extremely familiar with,
Yeah.
is the best version of. I have to get up every morning and make that decision because I know that you said to me, what do you mean, Dan? I've always said, and I tell everyone, it's like, at my core, I'm
Yeah.
not a good person. If you
I
had
still don't
known
believe
me,
that.
yeah,
No.
I know, but if you had known me in my 20s and my early 30s, at that time, I was that guy. If you have a group of friends, you have a group of guy friends.
Yeah.
Every one of them will tend to have some sort of superpower. It's like having a group of female friends. Whatever they have a superpower. You have find it guy, eat it guy, drink it guy, girl getting guy, what have you. I was fight guy. If there was any
Oh, that's
fighting to
right.
be done, it came to
Yeah.
me. I had an inherent and deeply rooted talent for violence, and I don't know where that came from. I'm still to this day extremely adept at
Mm.
that. I have that. It's right there. It's just under the surface. And
Yeah.
it's something that you live with, per se. People are
Yeah.
like, oh, you can change, or yes, you can change, but it's there. It's always
Mhm.
there. So I have to get up in the morning
Yeah.
and think to myself, well, what do I do today? I could walk into Walmart with a ball peen hammer, or I could go to the office. I'll
That's
go
my
to the
spouse.
office.
That
So,
is accurately my spouse, and I don't feel like I've heard anyone else portray that part of his psyche as well as you just did.
so
But there are conversations every now and then, especially in the car, and he's like, "Man, if I just had like this impressive nail gun underneath the back part of the vehicle, I could just fire it off." It's
yeah.
like it would still be illegal, but yeah, I understand you want that.
So yeah, because it's one of those things that for me, it feels right. It
Mhm.
feels, you know, natural and normal. Not that the
Yeah.
other doesn't,
Yeah.
but there's,
Mm.
definitely a
Yeah.
version of yourself that you want to show to the world. And why be
Yeah.
that when you can be this? When you can have friendships and connections and life and
Yeah.
all the positive things that come from it. It
Yeah.
might be nice to think, I could pick up that paint can and club him over the head with it. He'd never see it coming.
Yeah, he's got schemes that run through his head all day. I recognize that so well.
And that's
And
another
me,
thing that comes
yeah.
from trauma. Um,
Yeah.
is the worst scenario thinking. So,
Right.
and
Right.
yeah, if you're a first responder or you're a serviceman at all, that enters your head. And
Mhm.
it's there and you can deal with it on many levels, as I do with many clients. And I've often told them, I just finished working with a client for anger response.
Yeah.
And I always tell them that anger is not a negative emotion. I hear that too much. We
No.
like to quantify emotions into positive or negative, and this is good and that's bad,
Yeah.
and this is right and that's wrong. Well,
Yeah.
no, anger can move you to, resolve an injustice, or anger can
That's your
move you to,
fire. That's your
yeah,
energy. Yeah.
exactly. It's the response. It's how you
Mhm.
respond to that emotion that is so much more important. You can
Yeah.
snap a vacuum cleaner over your leg because it's not working right, or
Mhm.
you can simply fix the problem. Now, I'm not saying that I did that,
Too many
but
times.
yeah, you'll only do it once before you go, well, that wasn't a good idea. That was not a good idea. That hurts. Oh boy, that hurts something fierce.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yes, in all is seriousness,
Yeah.
when working with a client,
Mhm.
whether they're a police officer or a firefighter, and they're having this anger that's affecting their life, their relationship, their
Yeah.
job, because they don't know how to respond to it. That's where we need to lead them, is to a better response, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it also means you got to meet them where they're at. And if they're in that dark place, having that dark humor or intrusive thoughts, or that's the scope from which they're seeing the world, they need you to sit right there. And having someone who has that ability is what makes the whole difference, I find.
It does, and it's easier for
Yeah.
me because I speak their language.
Yes.
So yeah, and they know that I know, and that's another big thing with service people. And I shouldn't say that
Mhm.
possibly, though. It's, oh, you couldn't possibly know. It's just because you read it in a
Yeah.
textbook. Um,
Yeah.
but they don't understand that. Well, yeah, he studied it. He understands the psychological significance of your what you're going through. But
Yeah.
you know, and I never empathize. I don't put too
Mhm.
much of myself into their when I'm working with them, because if I do that,
Mhm.
then it just becomes about me and less about them. So I have to
Mhm.
understand it, but I keep that
Yeah.
professional distance and just work with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because I mean, if you climb into the hole with them, you lose your way out.
Well,
Yeah.
yes and no. You know the old joke, right?
I do. It's a bit of a long one. I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it comes down to, dude, why are you in this hole? Now we're both stuck down here. Yeah, but I've been here and
Yeah.
I know the way out. So,
Yeah.
but no, I
It
don't
just
jump
takes
into,
longer than you'd
yeah,
like, though.
yes, it
That's,
does.
that's not the quick route.
Yeah. But I don't jump into the hole with them,
Yeah.
but I definitely know the way out, and I will help
Yes.
them find it. So, yeah.
It's just a lot easier from that other vantage point. Yeah.
He was walking
So,
along, he just jumped in.
yeah. So, what I love about that is I'm a big fan of archetypes. Not so much the Jungian perspective, which you're probably better versed in than I am. I'm a big fan of Carolyn Miss and Carolyn Miss's work with archetypes. And so when you're talking about that propensity to be fight guy, to um, use that to the best of your ability, I'm thinking from the archetypal perspective of, oh, so that's where the crazy kindness and generosity and the capacity to not react versus respond comes from. That's the flip side of that coin. It's like, oh, now I get it.
It
Because
is
you
the flip
had to
side.
have that shadow walk before you could bring out the treasure into the light.
So yeah, it's more of it's darker than a shadow. It just really is.
Yeah, where there's apparently something touching your leg.
So I mean, it's almost, I think of it, a great analogy was, there was a television show on with David Borealis, and he played this character Angel, and
Oh,
on the one side you
Boreanaz.
had Angelus,
Mhm.
and on the other side you had the good
That's
guy.
right.
So that, I think that was a great analogy, and that's really
Yeah.
works out. So sometimes when I'm dealing with somebody, you know, that has that, basically they're looking for that other side of the coin, we just kind of start turning it slowly. And I don't go, what a lot of people will hit is the self-love. They'll start with that.
No, that's
The
not where
big,
that starts.
yeah, because the big problem with that is in firefighting, police officers, nurses, ER, doctor, is moral injury. Yeah, they've witnessed something
Say
that
more
is,
about that. Yeah.
huh?
Say more about that.
Oh yeah, they have witnessed something that overtly challenges the ethical and moral confines of life or within themselves. So you lose the ability to begin to believe in goodness or kindness or generosity in just, a generalized way. It is very effective. And it also affects their own morality, in a way. So that self-love becomes hard. All right. They become very unable to accept the fact that maybe they could be better. And knowing
So
that comes from,
that really speaks to like a whole stretch of time when I became a step parent, and I was just kind of thrown into it. And I liked kids, but I hadn't raised any kids. I was just still relatively coming out of my 20s. And it was all very just surprise. And within a weekend, all of a sudden you go from dating someone to being a full-on parent. And it's like, oh, wow. And it wasn't a straightforward thing. But I hadn't heard or known that part of it, the moral injury part. And now that you're talking about it, it's like, oh, I can definitely identify where that happened at one point.
So yeah,
because I did feel like I saw the depravity of what another human being could do, particularly to a child. And that really did shake me.
So yeah, it will shake your foundations. So it becomes difficult to get past that, as if to say, every person is bad, every person lies, every person does this, and if every person does it, I must do it, and therefore I'm not worthy of my own self-respect. So you got to be careful with that. You might have to build that back up, get their schemata or their scaffolding kind of rebuilt, if you will.
I did.
Yeah.
I did, because essentially what happened was then the flip side, I overcompensated as a parent in a very kind of codependent way. And then we had to deal with the aftermath of that. And it's like, oh, I have to find a middle ground. So thank you for that. That was really fascinating, the moral injury part, because I don't think we talk about that nearly enough. And that definitely plays a big factor of that whole journey into it and through it.
Yeah, it's tough. And the other thing is especially with post-traumatic stress, coming out of the other side is it doesn't actually leave you, but you're able to manage it much better. Avoidance, irritability, anger, guilt, all these things, you've got to work through them and kind of begin to understand that, it's not really your fault. And you didn't create the emergency. You just responded to it. So, it's really kind of how you work through it. And it doesn't happen in one session.
No. No.
I generally wind up working with post-traumatic stress disorder or syndrome or what have you, usually about 12 sessions. So just to make sure that we've encompassed everything in a safe way and in a safe, and I'm going to say it, safe space within themselves. Okay. Within themselves, guys, within themselves. All right.
With how they define that.
Yes. So he said,
although,
safe space.
Some wonderful things can happen. I did work with one lady, and she hadn't told me that she had PTSD because she hadn't identified it for herself. And so I didn't know she was having emotional flashbacks until she phoned me one day and was in the process of it. And then through doing some inner child work, we just happened to hit the right part. And through resolving that, then the flashbacks were gone. And so the next call the following week was, oh my God, these things that I've had have stopped. And it was like, excuse me, you had what? you might have mentioned that on your intake form.
Okay, when we were talking and I said, You didn't think that that was important. Okay, I got you. So yeah,
Yeah.
but
And it was those initial days. I was very thorough, but it just wasn't. I think it's that lack of awareness sometimes that we can have. And I can also relate to that too, because the first time that I started to realize I had PTSD, I thought it was just really bad anxiety. I didn't realize, oh no, I'm actually having a flashback first thing in the morning because I'm worried about the terror that my day is going to bring. That took a few months.
oh my
So I
god,
could understand why she didn't actually put that on or understand or even say, hey, I think I may have PTSD or be experiencing this. Yeah.
so yeah, it's tough because many people aren't. It's not one of those things that if you look at the definition of post-traumatic stress disorder, there's varying definitions, and one of them will automatically
Yeah.
talk about combat situations, and it has to be this, and these 5 things have to happen in order to be diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, and then in others it's
Mhm.
these 3 things have to happen. So it's
Yeah.
schools of thought, and most people walking the world don't have that knowledge readily available. So because they
Yeah.
don't have that knowledge available, they don't equate to post-traumatic
Yeah.
stress disorder. They just go, well, I've got
No.
anxiety, or I have panic
Yeah.
attacks, or it's something else.
They're looking for what they've seen on the Hollywood screen and expecting it to look and feel exactly like that.
I know.
Because that's how they've been educated. So,
Yeah.
myself included initially. Yeah.
I had a psychology professor that told me that whatever the mind can conceive, the body will gravitate towards. And I'm like, well, I have to
Yes.
disagree with you, because in my mind, I'm married to Megan Fox, and my body hasn't done anything about that at all.
Listen, let me tell you, I've been watching the occasional celebrity hint here and there. That was a gift. Be grateful that didn't happen.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
my. He's crazy, people. Dan's got a
Silver
little bit of a
linings.
problem. Yeah. I haven't gone to a conference
Oh,
where people
goodness.
haven't wanted to go have a session. I was like, I go to a conference like, you should really have a session with me, dude.
Oh, ouch. I don't think I've had that happen to that extent. Ouch.
Okay.
Oh,
It's that dark humor. Most people don't understand how to,
yeah.
what I mean? They don't get it. The
Yeah.
old joke is that, to make America laugh, dress a person up as an old lady and drop her down a manhole cover. To make a fire medic laugh, it has to actually be an old lady. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. Yeah, my spouse tends to enjoy the hugging a toaster in the bathtub jokes.
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
first, it was terrifying, and then it was like, okay, it's I get it. You just that's where your mind goes. It's fine. We'll
You're
be okay. Everything will be fine.
fine. Yeah, it's
We
fine.
don't we
Yeah,
don't
but you
own any
just said,
toasters.
don't worry about it. Yeah. And your friends don't get it. You're just like, don't worry about it. We're fine. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
no, they don't.
Did you want the pepperoni, honey? But he just said, yeah, pepperoni or not pepperoni? What are we getting for dinner? So,
Oh God. Oh
but
wow.
anyway, so yeah. Oh, you know what? Another thing right up I didn't mention about,
Mm,
God, it just popped into my head.
yeah.
Not only with the moral injury, let's go back to moral injury there for a second.
Mhm.
Not only does it affect their morals, their principles, it can affect them spiritually as well
Yeah.
on that level.
Yeah.
And that moves more towards your area than mine, as you
Yeah.
know, that,
Yeah.
science and not a real spiritual guy, but that's okay, because we all have our, areas that we work in, and it becomes one of those great things. So when people have a spiritual issue, I tend to, send them to other people, refer them to someone that might be able
Yeah.
to help them in a better way. Because for me, I'm all about scientific methodology. And
I know
yeah,
you wouldn't expect this from me, but I actually did not begin that way. I have a very skeptical mind, even still. And if it's not personal experience, I have a hard time with it. And even when it is personal experience, sometimes it needs to be a few times
so,
for
are
me to
you
really give
sure?
it. its weight. Yeah.
Yeah. So just looking at him like, I know he's funning with me right now. He ain't doing it right now. I've seen your kind before, fella. Anyways, I'll stop. So, but it does, it has that spiritual
Yeah.
component to it because it can crush your spirit, and it
Yeah.
might take a while to get that back.
Or the way that I like to frame that is a soul retrieval.
That's another good one. Yeah. Soul retrieval.
Yeah.
I could probably use some soul retrieval because there's a lot of times I walk up to those automatic doors and they don't open. And that's always my things like, this is because I don't have a soul, right? I got to wave my hand at it.
I feel that. Oh my God. I felt that. It was awful.
I'm sorry.
No, but I've heard that before. I have heard that analogy before. And I believe I heard it, I want to say from another teaching medium.
Wow.
So you're more intuitive than you'd ever given yourself bank for. There it is. We have it on proof. We have video.
Yes, we have video. We have audio. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. So it's like
I still have those photos of you looking at crystals.
Yeah, I know. And I want you to know that I had this look on my face.
Yeah, you quite possibly did.
Like, like the energy from the crystal heals. Shouldn't it be glowing or something? So, and I'm not, I don't want to be, and I said that to somebody the other day. I was talking, I can't remember who I was talking with, but woo hypnosis. And we were talking about stage hypnosis, and people wanted to be accepted and da-da-da. And I said, we should probably stop saying that. Stop saying woo-woo hypnosis, because that's just not accepting those practitioners in their field either. Going right down the middle with, science and, medical and all this great stuff that we do as a medical clinical hypnotherapist. And then, stage hypnosis isn't real hypnosis. And then you get into the crystals and the sound healing and so on. Belief and structure can heal people just as good as, or I shouldn't say just as well, but it can help to heal people. That's your belief. That's your structure. That's your thing. And
you mentioned it yourself earlier, the mind-body connection.
Yeah, exactly. Which is athletics, mind-body. As I've gotten older, my mind-body connection has been very, very real.
Is it more two-way now? Where initially it was one way, now it's two-way.
Yes, it will have a talk with me. I'll get up in the morning after going to the gym and working out really hard. It's like, we'd like to take this moment to remind you that you are 54, not 24. The number is 54, not 24. Here's how we're going to make this. Pain. You feel that? Okay. All right. So,
So it's a public service announcement coming from your knees.
Exactly. Brought to you by your spine. Like,
my spouse knows that one, yeah.
Yes.
So, Alan speaks that one fluidly.
I don't.
Or is spoken to, I should say.
Oh, yeah. When I was a young fire medic, bench press 365 pounds, 405 pounds. We're squatting, we're doing. It's like, I don't go anywhere near that anymore, especially after that injury. But my body just was like, hi there. We haven't spoken in a while, but we're going to now. I'll stop that. That's my radio voice. I got to stop that.
I love it. That's very fun. Actually, it would be very effective for hypnosis. I don't think I've heard your hypno voice.
Hypnotic voice. Yeah. I've been told that, by many clients, like, your voice is so amazing. And that was not something I was prepared for as a young hypnotist, to have a client tell me like, oh my God, your voice is so wonderful. I'm just thinking, what?
It's the comments that come in of, I go to sleep to your voice every night, that are a little like, oh, of course you do.
Okay. That's not creepy
I'm sorry
at all.
about that. Or when they come in and say, oh, you were in my dream last night.
That's sure. Yeah. Well, you were, I don't want to know.
Was it helpful? Great.
So yeah, see, that's what you would do. You would play
Yeah.
cards with a rabbit while a bear was eating me.
Okay, to be fair, I've had some of those conversations with my spouse too. You want what for dinner? Excuse me? No, not after last night.
Wait, what? I wasn't there last night. Oh, yes, you were.
And yes, well, that's right, you weren't.
Oh, God. Whew.
I'd like to say I'm getting better with that. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, he will never be allowed on this podcast because the things he would reveal would be painstaking.
We're not doing that. So you don't get to be on the
that's right.
podcast ever. Doesn't happen. So, anyways, yeah. What else is going on? Well,
I'm incredibly grateful for your journey. Like, just wow. You know, when we were doing the intake and everything, and I asked for your bio, and you said, "I'm me," I thought, oh, this will be interesting. But this has been immensely interesting, and I loved that we were able to explore things from a different frame too, to see like how you've had so many experiences and the elements were very much present and the archetypal aspect of it and then the moral injury. It's been a fascinating conversation. Thank
exactly.
you.
As long as you don't see me at a conference and turn and run the other way, that will be fine. It's like, oh, that's Dan.
I assumed you did first. You saw me and ran.
No. Well, I do stutter because I know what's going to happen. Is like, she's a hugger and I'm not a hugger. So there's always that. You notice she's like, well, he stopped. I'm like, okay, here we go. We're going in, which is fine. I'm getting better with that. You know, it's just like people like, it's like, let's hug. Dan's not a hugger. If his hands are wrapped around you, good chance you're bleeding. So no, I'm kidding, guys. But getting better at it. So, but the only other thing I can talk about for a real quick minute is I am working, as I look at it here, on the spring issue for the Hypno Cafe magazine. So, hoping to have that'll be out. And so, yeah, that's the last thing that we, because I started the podcast for fun, but Heather doesn't let me have fun. So, we have a magazine now.
So, what are you presenting at the, oh goodness, Performing Hypnosis Summit?
I am talking about theatricality in your show. The first, I know, the first summit that they did was virtual and had a lot of great people come and do that on the Zoom. And we talked about that, you know, stage hypnosis had become, and I hate to say the word stale, and that it could, you know, be a little bit more Broadway. It could be a little bit more theatrical. And when I was in the college at that time, way back in 95, I was taking my fire engineering through Kirkland Community College, which I did. I had to get my fire engineering certificate. It wasn't the associate's degree, but you had to have humanities for it. Now, I could have taken the associate's degree, but they stopped that degree. And I wound up at the Performing Center, the Performing Arts Center there at Kirkland Community College, and it was big. It was a big center. It wasn't like a little teeny tiny theater. It was huge. And they were like, oh, send him over, you know, whatever, theater. When they found out I had carpentry skills, I was the greatest guy ever. So, yeah. I wound up actually being the backstage director for the 4 semesters. And then they hired me to continue doing that for about 2 years after that. And then I think they closed the center. And of course, then I did more work with a theater in Bay City and a theater here in Houghton Lake. So I had all this production stuff for theatricality and all this good stuff. So yeah, which is another interesting aspect of life. You don't think you're going to be taking a path until you find yourself on it. And I have, it's almost like I've just stumbled on. just stumbled into stuff per se. Because like, well, you got to do this.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, here we go. We'll go do
And then
this.
every one of those skills is applicable.
So
So I like to joke that in a past life, I wanted to be a graphic and web designer. What I didn't know is how much I was going to need that for my own business and practices. And now I don't pay for a single thing because I do it myself.
yeah. And I'm self-taught, and I do most of the stuff myself, except for the website for the conference. I really wanted that to have a professional flair. So I had Melissa Sullivan built that for us, and she has continued to work on it, continued to help me work on it, so that it has a good, clean, grown-up professional look. So because we wanted the conference to be a little bit more, and I don't know if that's a good word or a bad word, but a little bit more grown up as it looked. So, but yeah. So, because I mean, you were busy off there living your life and doing stuff for you. You could think of me once in your selfish life.
Well, I really did need hypnosis and coaching to even get out there as an entrepreneur. Like I could not get out the gate because of the early childhood trauma. I have clients often come to me and they're like, how do I heal my shadow? And it's like, become an entrepreneur. We're going to see it all. Every single barrier you may have in your subconscious, we will find.
Exactly.
In record timing. Yeah.
As we often say, all right, sit down. We're going to root around in there, see if we can't break through some of the branch. That'll be fine. That's going to be all right. We'll just kick it and gravy. It'll be all right. It's going to be good. Where are you going? Sit down. We're going to fix it. No? All right. Nobody wants to hear their therapist do that. So I don't do that when they come in. Like, all right, give me sit down. We're going into the cellar. That's a bit into the cold room, as it were. I just remember my grandma James's cold room. That's where she kept all the canned goods. That's over there. That's in the cold room. Fine. And yeah. So.
Yeah. So now, when you show up at the next conference with a giant question mark or exclamation over your head, I'm fully expecting a dwarf costume.
I may save that for Podfest. And I will send you the link for that, by the way. And any other podcasters out there. I stumbled across it. Again, it is a conference for podcasting. So,
oh, God.
Yeah. I just thought to myself, that looks fun. So, yeah, why not? But
I love that you were the one who went there with that conversation, though, of it's wild how, it feels and it looks like Plinko, but we're getting all the skills we need for what we're heading towards, even though it's not a conscious plan.
Yeah, if there is such a thing as a guardian angel, mine is drinking scotch heavily. So.
I feel like they've done their job, though. They've done a profound, wonderful job, and I'm grateful that you survived every single
we have a team of specialists
explosion
working
that
on
you've had. I'm sure there are countless more that you haven't had the chance to tell us about, but I also don't want to keep you all day because I know you are a very busy man doing wonderful things.
That's I will. Yeah, that's not a problem. I've enjoyed talking with you and having a good time. And I took the day off just to get ready to head out to the summit. So I do have a lot of packing to do, so I can get out there and show people how wonderful theater is. And
does the documentary start on your travels?
It does. It is going to be the first one, as a matter of fact. To do that. So that's what's going to start the documentary. And I hope, like I said, I hope it goes well. I hope it goes well, and I hope it's able to show people why you need to not stay in your bubble. Which is what I did. I don't know if you got a chance to read that article, From My Chair to the World. And so
I believe I did, but it's a little foggy.
That's okay. It didn't make an impression. I'm all right. I understand.
No, it absolutely did, but I am such a consumer of content.
I know.
It is a problem.
But okay, Frank and I are going to let you get back to your life. So,
well, just a moment.
Sure.
What is one last thing you would like the audience to know about healing trauma and transcendence? If there was one big takeaway you could share, what would that be?
One big takeaway about healing trauma is that it is an ever ongoing experience. The healing happens
Mhm.
every day. Even after you leave the
It
therapist,
does.
even after you do that, there's going to be moments that challenge them, moments that might regress them back. So that healing happens every day, and understand that it's a lifelong process. As you keep moving through it, you are able to better deal with it. So yeah, if that makes any sense at all.
That is profoundly wise and very astute. Thank you so much, Dan, for having been here and having come on. And where do people find you?
I'm in the studio right now. No, you guys can find me at Michigan.
And anything else or anywhere else you'd be that you would like to include?
Oh, let me see. They can find me on MichiganHypnotherapyGuild.com. They can find us at hypnocafemagazine.org or the MichiganHypnosisConference.com. It's no longer my hypno conference. That was the worst name in the world. I should have never said. It's like my hypno conference. So you're having a conference with yourself?
There are a lot of moving parts involved.
There are.
Some of them are internal. That's the way that goes.
So yeah, that's where you guys can find me in all those three places. The magazine, the conference, and the guild is where I'm at.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for taking the time and the attention and for bringing Frank with you today. His presence is always ear to ear grinful.
That's my co-host.
I hope you enjoy your good cup of joe and have happy and safe travels. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this transformative episode of Trauma and Transcendence. Your stories matter. I would love to hear them and from you. Connect on our website, healingbeyondtrauma.com, or drop me an email at amanda@healingbeyondtrauma.com. Remember, healing is a journey we take together. Until next time, stay connected, stay inspired. This is Amanda, wishing you bright blessings.